Hello everyone, this is part 39 of What If Naruto Passed the Genin test, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me. 3 days later. Naruto, stop it, Sakura mumbled, turning over in her sleep and clutching at her pillow. This is too much. The kunoichi tossed onto her side and kicked the thick comforter off herself and the bed. Riotous images danced around her mind, making her twitch. Thoughts of Naruto suddenly appearing in front of her as she stood on a dark plain, then disappearing just as quickly only to whisper something undecipherable behind her back paraded behind her eyelids. The unconscious ideas seemed to have no real direction or aim. She dreamed for a while she was reliving the Chunin exams, sprinting through the forest of death, watching Naruto fight Hinata in the arena, then her mind jumped and she saw the demon brothers, those mysterious ninja to whom she'd thrown herself in an attempt to save Naruto so many years ago, darting towards her in an otherwise blank void. The ninjas vanished as she raised her arms, both in the dream and in her bed, to shield herself. She lay like that for a minute or two, drifting between dream and reality, before slowly opening her eyes to the gloomy bedroom. Nothing had changed since she went to bed. The ceiling fan was slowly making its rounds, disturbing the air only enough to cool the room by the tiniest bit. The Arab clock on the wall opposite the door was steadily ticking away, and outside the open window there wasn't the subtlest hint of light. The only illumination in the room came from the crack in the bathroom door. She'd left the nightlight on in there and it cast just enough light for Sakura to see. Great, muttered the pink-haired steward. The clock's ticking was a reminder that it was now 5:10 in the am. She needed to be up in 20 minutes and had only gone to bed 2 hours before. How perfect is this? Groaning, Sakura sat upright and readjusted the thin strap of her silk seafoam nightgown, pulling the fabric up from where it had slipped over her shoulder, and stood up. Not a word, she muttered to herself, looking down at the nightstand as her head rocked with an aching hangover. The smell of wine still perfumed the air, the sauce an open bottle, half empty, and a drained glass by the bed. I warned you it would give you a hangover, Sakura chided herself as she walked to the bathroom door. I said not to say a word, Sakura grumpily reminded herself, walking into the bathroom and sitting down on the edge of the tub. Besides, how else am I supposed to sleep knowing he's not safe? I don't know, she answered. But going sleepless for 2 days, then getting drunk and finally passing out in bed after. I get it, Sakura said, cutting herself off and flexing her hand once. Just shut it. I'm still not totally together. The steward shook her head, eliciting a scream of pain from her skull as the hangover flared up. She groaned again and turned on the water to the coldest setting, watching disinterestedly as the tub filled. Her thoughts began to wander aimlessly, but snapped to quickly as the chilly water ran in the bathtub and lapped at her hand. Oh, she sighed, reaching out and turning the nozzle. The water stopped flowing and Sakura looked at it for a minute. He's fine, she reassured herself, standing up and undoing the solitary button that held the robe closed. She let it fall open, then reached up and brushed it off her shoulders, letting the silk fall to the ground with a quiet shur. For a moment she didn't move, but just looked herself over in the mirror opposite the tub, then groaned disapprovingly and turned back. She raised one leg, holding onto the wall for support, and let her foot down in the water. The frigid liquid sent pinpricks racing up and down her calf. She hissed reflexively as she stepped in and slowly sat down, immersing herself. The water reached to her BS once she was sitting fully, then crept up to her N as she leaned back and rested her head against the back of the porcelain basin. Damn, that's cold, she muttered, forcing her eyes shut and shivering as her heart pounded in her chest. She instinctively closed her legs and rubbed her feet together in the cold water, though she let her arms sink at her sides. I haven't had a cold bath like this since before the first sound invasion, she slowly recalled the incident, half fondly as it involved Naruto. That was when I'd run into Naruto, and Ino at Ichiraku Ramen. Her stomach jumped as she recalled the Yamanaka's name. I was so depressed back then, about Naruto, about Sasuke, about mom and dad and everything. But out of all of those, all I have left is Naruto, and with she twitched, thinking back to the hospital room when Naruto had woken up and not remembered that it was Ino who had nearly killed him. The thought that the Yamanaka girl was back. What will happen if he runs into her? Sakura fretted. What would he do? What would she do? What would I do? Surely he wouldn't try to bring her back. He couldn't. She's too far gone. But if he tried, would she lead him on so she could catch him off guard? He's too good for that, but if he still has feelings for, no, he couldn't. But does he? Naruto, Sakura quietly med. Please be safe. She let herself seep down in the water, pushing her knees up past the surface as her head sank lower, until only her nose and eyes were above the water. The cold temperatures and her racing heart were pushing the fog of the alcohol out of her mind and sharpening her senses, but also sharpening her worries that something might be going wrong with Naruto's mission. He's already had ample time to do what he was going to by this point, she thought, remembering back to Naruto's plan, but he hasn't sent back any kind of message. And why would he need so much extra time? What's he really planning? She sat up straighter in the water and ran one hand through her hair, untangling a few knots as her mind worked. There's no way his sole goal is to neutralize Kiri. He would never do anything so ostentatious without having a much more subtle aim in mind. Sakura continued to let her thoughts brew. She knew for a fact that Naruto had become a much more tactical and practical person since returning with Jiraiya. She knew he would never do anything high profile without aiming to have it flush something or someone out of hiding, or to get himself into a good position to make a more surgical move. Is he laying a trap? She wondered. It makes sense, he could use all of Kiri as bait, but what's the trap for? Who could he be hoping to? Sakura's form twitched and not from the cold. Stop worrying, she whispered to herself, her voice strained. Ino belongs to Orochimaru now. There's no way Naruto could get her back and he wouldn't try. You don't have any reason to suspect that. He's not setting a trap for her, and even if he is, it's only to K. She jumped, splashing some water out of the tub as a loud knocking from the first floor shattered the still of the early morning. Someone was at the door. She reached up and put one hand over her thumping chest as her breathing jumped. There was another knock. Just a minute, she shouted loudly, surprised by the volume of her own voice. The knocking ceased as she stood up, bent over, and pulled the plug on the drain. The water in the tub began to disappear quickly while Sakura reached down, picked up her robe, and slid it on, grabbing a length of cord from beside the tub at the same time and tying it around her waist to better hold the flimsy fabric closed. She couldn't hold back a chuckle when she saw how little detail the silk hid when she was cold. Sakura walked quickly out of the bathroom and crossed the bedroom into the hall. Passing by the several doors on the upper level of the house, she almost broke into a run and down the stairs when she realized that this might be some word from Naruto. Sakura skipped down the last step and arrived at the front door in an instant. With fumbling fingers she undid the latch, both S-bolts, and slid the bar from its place and opened the door. Her heart sank. "Good morning, Sakura-sama," said the bright-eyed, brown-haired boy standing in her door. "I'm sorry to bother you so early." "It's all right, Amura," said Sakura, glancing at the boy's clothing. It had been a while since she'd last seen him, but Amura's physical appearance had changed dramatically in the past few weeks. The most noticeable change was the muscle that had sprung from nowhere to fill out his shirt. "You joined the Crane Garrison, I see." Amura grinned widely and spread his arms to show off the uniform, though he was also secretly trying to showcase his new physique. It was a deep red shirt and pants of indistinct make with black stays, like jagged clouds or a tiger's marks wrapping around his arms, legs, and trunk. His forehead protector was tied around his head as with most other ninja, boldly displaying the leaf insignia, but the white cloth to which said protector was bolted was a telltale marker that the uniform and the boy in it was worn by were affiliated with the Crane organization. "Do you like it?" asked Amura. "The Crane pays really well even if you're only working with them for a short time, and joining the garrison now that the Crane took control cooperatively with the town guard means that I get to work, train, and fight with both. It's a great deal and the training, even for civilians, is amazing." Amura cut himself off, suddenly looking away from Sakura's eyes as his own glance suddenly caught what she was wearing. "I know," said Sakura, partially annoyed at the boy, as was her habit. "I'm the one who organized the new defenses and integrated the Crane troops with the town guard, remember? If anyone would know, it would be me. Now what did you need, Amura?" "Oh, right," said the boy quickly, reaching around into a concealed pack on his back and pulling out a scroll. A ninja from Naruto's strike force arrived at the west gate a few minutes ago. He handed this scroll to my commanding officer and said it needed to go directly to you, then ran off. Sakura's heart jumped. A message from Naruto, she asked. Let me see that. Amura turned over the scroll without question and Sakura grasped it tightly. I don't know what it is, just that it's yours now, he said, stealing a quick glance down Sakura's figure, particularly at her exposed legs. Anyway, I should get back to my post. You do that, said Sakura, stepping back and inside. Have a good day, Sakura-sama, said Amura happily, as he jogged off into the pre-dawn gloom. Sakura stood there for a minute before answering. You too, she said after he was well out of earshot. She closed the door and walked to the couch, dropping down into it with a muffled thud. Sakura's fingers were motionless on the scroll. He wouldn't wait this long to send word unless things had taken longer than he anticipated, she thought. Why else would he? The wax seal snapped and Sakura unfurled the scroll. It was maybe 10 inches long and 4 wide, covered in small font. A paragraph at the top followed by what looked like a long list. Sakura, it read at the top. The steward's heart thumped. I left specific instructions with my messenger that this note be delivered to your Amura friend. He's naive enough to trust, and I knew he would deliver this to you rather than send it through the proper channels. By the time you receive this, Kiri will be nothing but a bad memory and my men will be focusing on raising the rest of the villages in the water country. My campaign has been a total success, and victory is almost assured now. There's only one final piece that needs to be moved into position, but for this to work I need you to trust me implicitly and without question. I need you to spread the word in Konoha that I've been forced to attack Kiri when they found us out. I destroyed the village with only 70 men and killed the Mizukage. What follows is a list of the battle statistics for you to use, though I'd prefer if you kept hidden how many non-combatants were killed. I included that only so you would know the truth and could use it in the diplomatic circles. The public can find out later once we've already won. I should be back in another 2 days or 3 at the most. I miss you terribly, Sakura, and I can't wait to see you again. The girl stopped reading before she went onto the list, closing her eyes and folding the scroll in her lap. Naruto, she mumbled, half smiling. You're safe after all. Thank goodness. Quickly Sakura picked the list back up and unfurled it. Don't worry, I'll get the story out to the public. 8 Konoha Ninja S, she read, quickly scanning through the names. She recognized a few and committed them to memory. Kiri Ninja Ked, estimated 630. Kiri Civil Defense Officers Ked, 83. Kiri Citizens Ked, 9,960. Water Country Non-Combatants Ked, 32,000, Sakura muttered, awestruck. Water Country Military Losses, estimated 99.6. Water Country Civilian Losses, estimated 99.4. The list continued on to detail where Naruto thought the remaining Kiri survivors were hiding and how he planned to find them, but Sakura didn't read the rest. The scroll dropped out of her hands and plopped into her lap as she stared blankly off towards the window. Naruto, she muttered in a quaking voice. How? I didn't really think. She closed her eyes and folded her hands over the letter. It doesn't matter, she said more firmly. You did what you had to do and I'm behind you the whole way. Quickly she began planning. I'll only tell everyone that he destroyed the armies, not the village itself. I'll save that for more diplomatic circles. SC. The rain had finally stopped. For 2 days the sky had done nothing but rumble and flash with lightning and thunder. The clouds had poured countless gallons of water out all over Kiri and the surrounding villages, but surprisingly, the ground was already beginning to dry. There wasn't a rain cloud in the sky and the mid-morning sun was shining brightly. As Naruto walked along the top of Kiri's wall, which he had left standing as a means to stifle the spread of diseases sure to breed among all of the rotting, waterlogged corpses in the ruined city, he could no longer see the massive puddles, more like small ponds, that had sprung up all over the landscape. The low places in the land which had been lakes a day before were already absorbing the excess rainwater, leaving little more than patches of wet grass and lichen. This went off too well, Naruto mused as a sea breeze wafted in from the coast a few miles away, carrying with it the smell of salt. He looked out over the forest skyline to the south. From his vantage point 100 feet above the ground, Naruto clearly saw the 5 pillars of smoke off in the distance, billowing hundreds of feet into the air, though the forest effectively hid the burning villages and communities beneath the canopies. The sisters should be almost finished with those hamlets by now, he said to himself. There was no real joy in his voice, only fact. Granted, there can't be many, if any, people left in them. Most of the non-combatants were evacuated to Kiri, but it will still send a message to the rest of the continent if an entire country is devastated. This should be worth it. Naruto turned as footsteps clapped on the cobblestone walk behind him, and saw Shikamaru walking towards him. The Anbu officer's head was still bandaged around his left eye from where one of the Kiri guards had struck him during the interrogation, and his arm hung useless in a sling across his chest, but the nin still walked tall. Shikamaru, Naruto greeted him, inclining his head a bit. How are you feeling? Better than I was yesterday, said Shikamaru. My head still hurts though. It's good to see you though, even if it has only been less than 48 hours. Naruto nodded. I'm sorry, he said. If I had known they were waiting for us. We didn't have any warning, said Shikamaru, standing next to Naruto. They were already suspicious of spies, and when Trina and I tried to pass ourselves off as Kiri nin, it was just bad luck really. You couldn't have known they were watching for us. Yeah, but I still wish it hadn't had to be this way. Don't we all? Muttered Shikamaru, looking down into the ruins of Kiri. What a mess this turned out to be. But if nothing else, I suppose I owe you big time for saving me back there. Naruto just nodded and acted a perfect smile. What else could we do, said the blonde. You and Trina are 2 of our most valuable assets. Naruto shifted and glanced back towards the pillars of smoke in the distance. Besides, you're a friend. I really do appreciate it, said Shikamaru, wiping a lock of hair out of his face with his good hand. How much longer do you think it will be until we return to Konoha? Naruto cracked his N once and stretched his shoulders before answering. I'd say 2 more days, he said. We'll be leaving Kiri today for sure, I'm sick of it here, but we need to be as thorough as possible. You mean cleaning up the remaining villages, clarified Shikamaru. Something like that, said Naruto. You sound uncertain, something you'd like to say. Shikamaru hesitated for a moment. Permission to speak freely, he requested at last. Naruto turned to the Anbu head and smiled subtly. Absolutely, said the cage Genin. Shikamaru, when it's just me and you, it's all free. You don't need to ask to speak your mind with me. That's generous, sighed Shikamaru. But to be blunt, I don't agree with what you're doing here. All this is completely unnecessary. A pause settled over the 2 ninja. Maybe, said Naruto, turning away. But what else would you have me do? Give mediation a chance, said Shikamaru without hesitation. Sakura is a seasoned diplomat. Don't you think it would be better to try and hold off Orochimaru until we can convince his allies to abandon him? Butchering an entire country is too much. What makes you think I'm not giving diplomacy a chance? Asked Naruto, thinking quickly. Well, the fact that we just killed some 35,000 people for one, said Shikamaru, forceful but also carefully, ensuring his tone wasn't abrasive. How do you think the other villages, Iwa and Suna mainly, will view our actions here? Don't you think it might alienate them, make them fear us more than they respect us? Yes, said Naruto bluntly as another salty wind blew in over the wall and ruffled his hair. It will make them fear us, but that will keep them in line. Or it could make us a target, said Shikamaru. If they fear us too much, they may look to Orochimaru as someone who could save them from us. It may be a little extreme to look at it that way, but what we've done here is more than a little extreme. I see why you'd be worried, said Naruto, but now you're not the one giving diplomacy a chance. What we've done here is horrible, yes, but think about what someone who knows how to speak well in public could do with it. Think of how Sakura could spin it into a political machine that might force our enemies' hands. I have looked at it that way, but I don't think there's any way for someone to put a positive spin on this. Shikamaru stepped up next to Naruto and spoke calmly. The most we can hope to do with this is make the other villages worry that we'll do it to them too. Naruto didn't respond immediately. He crossed his arms and looked down into Kiri. The bright sunlight illuminated just how much things had changed over the past few days. Weeds, crabgrass mostly, but also dandelions had begun springing up in the streets that had been choked with muck. It was almost pretty. The seedlings of vines and ferns had sprouted at the base of the ruined buildings that lined the streets. Gardening must have been a major industry here, thought Naruto. Just 3 days without people to hold back the weeds and plants, and nature is already starting to take back the village. I wonder how many people were employed by the city to keep the wild flora in check. Look how quickly everything grows here, said Naruto, pointing down into the village. It's only been a few days and the streets are already fighting not to be overgrown. Kiri does have an almost tropical climate to it, said Shikamaru quietly. It probably won't be more than a week before vines completely take over the ruins. But what does that have to do with anything? Think about how the spies Orochimaru will send in a few days to find out why Kiri has cut off communications will feel about what they find. They'll see what happened here, how quickly Kiri was reclaimed by the environment, and they will be afraid. Word will spread and I will be infamous. People will look at me as a butcher, and frankly they'd be right. But now think about what Sakura and our other diplomats could say about me. They would describe you as a monster who doesn't have to fight by the rules and wouldn't even if it was required of you, said Shikamaru, following Naruto's reasoning. And we could say that if the other villages don't surrender they'll be the next ones to face you, but again, that will only make them fear us. Do you really want that? Yes, said Naruto in an undertone. Their fears will be what holds them back. Or spurs them on, countered Shikamaru. Fear is CSP Ling Shikamaru, said Naruto. It can also be a drive to act. Then they'll act, but irrationally, said Naruto. We can count on their fear to blind them and make them easy targets. Shikamaru didn't answer. What would you have me do about it now? Asked Naruto. It's obvious you don't approve, but the deed is done. I did what I thought was right and can't take it back. I'm not asking you to take it back, responded the dark-eyed Anbu. Then what? Asked Naruto, his voice bearing an edge of exasperation. I don't think it should happen again, said Shikamaru, turning to Naruto with an expression of resolve. I'm your subordinate and I'll follow your orders, but at the same time, I can also, he cut himself off. It wasn't like Shikamaru to not finish a thought. You can also relieve me of duty, said Naruto, finishing the sentence. Shikamaru nodded. I know, said Naruto. But would you? Only if it becomes necessary, said Shikamaru. If I feel that your actions are endangering Konoha I will. Naruto closed his eyes and smiled. Good, he said. You're going to say that I should be willing to do that, prompted the Anbu. You're thinking that I need to have that mindset even though I know I couldn't hope to survive relieving you, since if I did it would mean that you had proven yourself so firm in your convictions that you wouldn't let me carry out my duties, since you would see that as impeding what you saw as best for Konoha, said Shikamaru, just as much to defend himself as guess Naruto's thoughts. You read my mind, said Naruto, grinning to himself. Shikamaru let a smile turn up one end of his mouth. I put some thought into this. Obviously, and frankly I wouldn't want it any other way, Shikamaru. I need people who care that much about Konoha with me. Which is why I didn't relieve you of duty, said the Anbu specialist. Because keeping you around, knowing full well that you are one of 3 people who can relieve me of my command, proves that I care enough about Konoha to do whatever it takes to protect it, even at the risk of both our lives and positions. Naruto finished Shikamaru's thought. Now my mind's been read, said the other man. But I don't mean this as a threat, Naruto. Please understand that. I know, Shikamaru. Naruto's voice was calm and warm. You're only informing me of what you will be required by your station to do if you feel what I'm doing endangers Konoha. Again, that's why I want you here. You care more about Konoha than you do either of us, as do I. It's also why I'll serve you unfalteringly, said Shikamaru. You and I are identical in that respect. We both love our home more than each other or ourselves, so I can count on you to do what you feel best for the village. But at the same time I will tell you exactly what I think is best for the village. And you can be sure I will ensure that you know what I think is best for the village, said the caged Genin. We both need the other's advice and approval if we want to work most efficiently. I agree, which is why I told you that I greatly disapprove of this and don't think it should happen ever again. Good, said Naruto. That's very good and I like it that way. The fact that we can communicate even in the face of differing opinion is the sign of a healthy relationship. Even if we are in disagreement on this particular matter, it doesn't hold any consequence right now. But trust me when I say that I took absolutely no pleasure in doing this, and if it can be avoided, I will not do it again in the future. Shikamaru looked back down over the ruined village and grimaced. I would make one exception though. Asked Naruto, turning to stand beside his friend. What do you mean? Shikamaru bit his lip and then took a deep breath. If you wanted to completely destroy Oto, I would endorse it fully. Naruto's eyes narrowed incredulously in surprise for only a split second before he recast his perfect facade of innocence. Is this a political ploy to try and regain my favor after that little argument? Wondered Naruto. No. Shikamaru knows that Sakura and Tsunade know that if anything happened to him it would have been me who removed him for my own benefit. He knows he's safe from me. Could he be genuine? I thought you disapproved of S like this, said Naruto, feigning surprise now. What makes Oto's people special? Think Naruto, said Shikamaru. You read my mind just a second ago, something I'm not used to and hate, so I thought it would be best to lay out all the cards right here and now. If you want to exterminate Oto, I would support the decision because it would CSPLE Orochimaru and possibly K him. It would be best for Konoha. So that's your game, Naruto's mind exclaimed, though his face hid the shock. You're trying to get me to agree with you immediately and thus prove my bloodthirstiness so you can remove me from command? Shikamaru, that's wonderful, but for now I have to defuse that little scheme. I don't know, said Naruto slowly. I agree that it may be best for Konoha, but don't you think it would be better to catch Orochimaru alone rather than attack his village to get to him? That seems a little bloodthirsty. Naruto put a little more emphasis than necessary on his last few words. Shikamaru's cheek twitched. He looked away. Yes, but since the battle at Suna he hasn't left Oto. So no, he knows he's been found out, Naruto thought. I know, said Naruto, but that doesn't mean I can't draw him out. And he might leave to attack Tsunade at Kumo, which would give the Hokage a clear shot at him and thus spare us from having to attack Oto. That's a possibility, said the Anbu specialist. The two were silent for a moment. A third breeze from the sea, this more salty than the other two, blew up and broke over the wall, rustling in the two ninjas' hair. I like that smell, said Shikamaru, effectively ending the debate. It's refreshing. Agreed, replied Naruto. So, where do we go from here? We've both agreed that we need the other to move effectively. Yes, and that's all I came to tell you, said Shikamaru. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go back to the camp and change these bandages. Naruto nodded as Shikamaru turned and began to walk away. How's your eye? He called after the raven-haired Anbu. Shikamaru stopped for just a minute, then resumed walking. If Tsunade had been here I'm sure it could have been saved, said Shikamaru. A detached retina is a nasty business, but at least I've got a spare. Shikamaru turned with the walkway as he reached the tower in the wall and pulled open the heavy wooden door, passing through and shutting it behind him with a muffled thump. Naruto, muttered the Anbu once the door was shut and he was alone in the darkness of the tower. Well played, it's almost too much to believe that you would become so evil. Can your sense of justice really have fallen so far? I can't allow this darkness to come to any more power in Konoha. The caged Genin turned away from the tower and breathed a sigh. So now there's Shikamaru to worry about, he mumbled. I suppose it had to be this way. His sense of justice is the price I have to pay for his brilliance. Unfortunately it will be quite a chore to match his cunning. So there's finally a thorn in your side, Kyuubi chortled, seeping into Naruto's consciousness. And it's someone you can't simply dispose of on a whim. It could be worse, thought Naruto. And I prepared myself for this, though to be perfectly honest I didn't know if he would ever go this far. Shikamaru's sense of justice is as inflated as mine. He really does care about Konoha, and he really will serve me because he must, but he also feels I'm a threat to Konoha, so he'll wait until I do something that directly threatens the village, at which point he'll sick Tsunade on me. If it comes to the point where Shikamaru can openly speak out against me, then the old woman will have no choice but to relieve me, and Shikamaru's justice will be satisfied. Unfortunately he and I must have differing opinions on the acceptability of certain actions in war. He must really hate that so many people agree with my methods. So you must simply avoid giving the runt any ammunition with which to prove that you're threatening Konoha. That is annoying. It means no more Sing villages. I hadn't planned on that anyway, not for a while at least. The only threat Shikamaru poses is if I commit direct treason, which I won't, and he knows it. Then why try to ensnare you? Because he feels he has to for the sake of the village. Call it overprotectiveness or something, but for now both Shikamaru and I are safe from each other, and now he knows that I know his motives, which only adds to the insulation between us. Right now there's effectively no threat. So that exchange was nothing more than a warning shot. Something like that. He really had nothing to lose by employing a tactic so simple. If he caught me, then he'd win, and if he didn't, then the worst that could happen would be my figuring him out, which would only further protect him from me, since by knowing his motives I would realize that to remove him would be a fatal mistake. This reminds me of chess, QB laughed. And the legendary Shikamaru has never lost a game of strategy. I know, but he's never played me. Besides, I need his tactical brilliance for now, even if he does want me removed for the sake of his own idealistic view of justice. Understandable, though it is quite ironic. The only real tactical threat to your plans, which isn't much of a threat at all, is someone whose mind works almost exactly like yours, only aiming at a different end. At any rate, Kit, don't you think it's time we got moving? You did say you had a plan to execute today, and I'm curious as to what it is. Absolutely, responded the blonde, jumping down from the wall and landing gracefully in the grass 100 feet below. It is almost that time, isn't it? Without another word, Naruto charged off across the plain separating Kiri's ruins from the surrounding forest and disappeared among the trees. Back in Konoha, at the Hokage's complex more precisely, Jiraiya stood in front of Tsunde's mahogany desk, holding an exceedingly thick folder in his hands and glancing through the hundreds of papers it contained. Though the comfortable leather high back behind the desk was vacant, and he'd been standing for nearly 3 hours reviewing the paperwork, Jiraiya refused to sit in, or even look at the chair. The room was empty except for the Sannin, just as Jiraiya liked it. Participated in the Second Ninja War, accumulated nearly 40 battlefield KS, achieved the rank of Genin before being honorably discharged at the age of 25 from Suna to work for the Crane, Jiraiya spoke to himself, reading over the profile page near the bottom of the stack in the folder. The profile consisted of the ninja's picture, name, age, height, weight, specializations, training experience, and a short biographical description. Just like the other 599 profiles in the folder the Crane organization had given to Jiraiya when they arrived in Konoha. A knock on the door broke the Sannin's concentration, and he closed the folder with a muttered groan. "Come in," he said loudly. The doorknob turned, making the latch catch noisily as the door opened. A quiet-looking girl, maybe 15, poked her head in the room and stepped in, keeping the door open with her foot. Excuse me," she said timidly, her brown eyes looking around uncertainly. "Is this where I sign up for the guard?" Jiraiya tossed the folder down on Tsunde's desk and looked at her incredulously. "I'm sorry," he said, his tone grumpy. "But the town guard is by selection only. You can put your name on their recruitment list, but there's no guarantee they'll recruit you." "Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear," she responded. "I meant, is this where I sign up for the Crane organization's volunteer militia?" Ever since Sakura allowed the Crane to merge with the town guard, there have been a flood of volunteers for the militia, thought Jiraiya. "No, their recruiting office is down by the west gate." "Thank you," said the girl quietly, stepping out and shutting the door. Jiraiya looked back down at the folder and groaned. "Why do I bother?" He sighed as another visitor knocked on the door. "All right, everyone be quiet and pay attention to me," shouted the tall man, his voice booming out over the crowd of 80 people. "If you'll all come to order, we can get started here." The Crane recruiter stood atop a small stage set up in the center of the field just outside Konoha's northern gate. His red and black uniform matched those of the two men standing on either side of him, but the recruiter's higher rank was made obvious by the golden chevron pinned to his right shoulder. Everyone in the crowd stopped murmuring and turned their attention on the man standing before them. The recruiter was silent for a second as he eyed the crowd of fresh recruits. Not a bad turnout, he thought to himself. "You've all taken a big step today," shouted the recruiter. "This is the first time in association history that the Crane organization has openly recruited people such as you, with no military background, to form a village militia. Congratulations." The crowd erupted and cheered until the recruiter raised his hands for quiet and silence fell back over the gathering. "I'm glad you all have such feelings and that you're eager to defend your village. Now to get down to business. The man continued, the way this is going to work is simple. All of you have signed up for a 6-month post, meaning that through the Crane organization, you will be actively employed in the Konoha militia for 6 months, for which the Crane will compensate you with a percentage of the money used to employ us. The first 2 months of your post will be basic, but grueling training. During this time you will be taught how to fight as a cohesive unit in an urban setting. The training will consist of 20 hours a day spent learning city defense tactics and going through physical training. Be forewarned that it will be a miserable, mind-numbingly wretched, but worthwhile effort. We're not promising to turn you into Genin-level warriors. Some of you can't even use chakra. However, what we do promise to do is make you better able to defend yourselves, your family, and your home. Again the crowd burst out cheering. With memories of the sound invasion still fresh in their minds, people leapt on the chance to make a concise effort to defend Konoha from further damage. Many of the people gathered before the stage threw their fists in the air and chanted, Konoha, over and over again. The recruiter waited another minute for the cheering to subside, and then continued. The Crane has been hired to act as a secondary garrison for Konoha, and to help accomplish that end we, the organization, have in turn hired you as a militia to augment the 600 ninjas sent by our affiliation to bolster the Konoha garrison. For the next 6 months you will serve the Crane which is serving your village. At the end of your post, should the war persist, you can either renew your post for another period of time, or you can resign and resume normal activities, but we promise you that as long as Konoha asks it of us, the Crane organization will dutifully serve. As the recruiter clapped his hands in finality, the 80 recruits, all born and raised in Konoha, began to clap also and resume their cheering. Several hundred yards away, Sakura stood atop the wall surrounding the Leaf Village, looking out over the field and smiling approvingly at the success of her efforts to bolster the town guard. There were 5 camps in all, small towns of tents pitched in clean rows and surrounded by wooden palisades, set up evenly in the field. Each pup tent housed 3 recruits, each row of tents held 20 tents, and each camp held 12 rows of tents. Every recruit was going to be trained in advanced self-defense, basic chakra use, and large group tactics. Any recruit that couldn't use chakra would be taught additional self-defense. Konoha is a village made up of 36,000 people, Sakura mused, and now 10% of our total population is being taught to defend the village with their lives. This should have happened years ago. Even with the excruciating training the people are going to endure, she said to herself, a single civilian can't hope to overcome a trained and seasoned ninja. Good thing then that the Crane will teach the militiamen to fight alongside trained ninja as reliable support units, and even a mere militiaman can get a lucky shot off that could kill a trained professional, and now we have more than 3,500 potential lucky shots, she chuckled. Naruto will be pleased. As another cheer went up from the crowds gathered about the stages in the field and carried on the wind to Sakura, she smiled widely and watched as of the soon-to-be militia broke off and marched behind the Crane recruiters towards the entrances to the camps. And Konoha will never be the same again. SC. Scores of miles to the east, Naruto perched among the treetops of the subtropical forest that covered most of the Water County's islands. He had left the path a few hours behind him and was now wandering amongst the canopies, waiting. I hate this, Kyubi growled in Naruto's mind. I couldn't hate this anymore even if it were possible. It's not right. Demon lords do not make themselves a prey animal. I hunt. I am not hunted. Relax, Naruto cajoled, don't look at it as being hunted. Think of this as an opportunity to sharpen your skills at ambushing. I do not like being a target, Kyubi complained. You sound unusually disagreeable, Naruto prodded, leaping up higher in the humid treetop, reaching a branch no less than 90 feet above the ground. Could it be that you're actually afraid? Not afraid, Kit, just angered that you insist on letting this trouble come to us rather than face it head on as we should. It's not natural this way. Naruto grinned and jumped off the branch. Falling 50 or so feet, he caught hold of another, thinner bough and swung himself up into a crouching position. Don't worry, he thought to Kyubi. Not much longer now. Besides, if we were the ones doing the stalking, then the ambush would be ruined. In a burst of speed, Naruto took off running through the trees, leaping from one to the next and sprinting along the branches thick enough to support his weight. I don't follow your logic, said Kyubi, an edge of distaste still in his voice. How does letting ourselves get caught off guard make us the ambushers? Kit, time is almost up. The demon's words were hurried and anxious. We should be making ready for a fight. Draw on my chakra, create some clones, anything. She's almost here and you're doing nothing. Can't you smell her? Naruto smiled widely as he felt his own pulse quicken. The scent of flowers, roses from Konoha, was floating in on the wind and making the back of his neck tingle. I feel her. Naruto stopped in his tracks, kneeling down on the branch a few dozen feet above the ground and looked down as though he were inspecting something. It's exhilarating. So close. Kit, move. I can't take it anymore. Naruto struggled not to laugh the words. The caged Genin felt his desire to stick to the plan of a quick ambush slipping away. Just make sure you keep me alive for a while and do your part when it comes. Kit. A breeze whipped up and the smell of blood washed over the forest. The hair on Naruto's arms and ends spiked as the metallic odor overpowered the aroma of the roses and the caged Genin stood up, bristling with anticipation. He couldn't hide it anymore. Reaching around his back and into the concealed flap of his suit, Naruto drew the golden sword from its hidden amber sheath, filling the air with the sharp ring of the brand's whetted appet. Been a while, said Naruto, his words a quiet chuckle, laced with long-buried excitement as he turned slowly. The wrapping of his blade's handle creaked under his tightening GS. Not 10 feet behind him was Ino, her brilliant blonde hair blowing in the wind, contrasting violently with her jet tank top and shorts. Her alabaster complexion was more faultless than he remembered and her turquoise eyes were fiery with thrill. Her voice was steel. Hello lover boy. X. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.